We are potentially getting exactly the kind of madness and chaos we all deserve as Big 12 fans going into the final 2 weeks of the season after a great Week 12 in the conference. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports, where you find us covering the Big 12 Conference. Appreciate you being here, and the only thing we ever ask of you, we don't want your information. We don't paywall anything. We just want you to like and subscribe to this video and to this channel on YouTube, on the podcast, or wherever you're getting the content. Thanks for being here as always. Let's dive into it after Week 12's in the books. And let's start with Big 12 After Dark. All right, we've got BYU blasting TCU at home in a bounce-back game by a final of 44-13. Holy smokes. Now, I had BYU minus the points. I didn't think it would be this bad. I mean, TCU has thrown in the towel on this season. And at some point, there will be a conversation, and I know it's happening in TCU land, as to whether or not Sonny Dykes is the right guy. I'm not suggesting it's going to happen. I don't believe it is. But at 6-4 with this collection of talent, coming off of that loss to Iowa State, the way they lost that game last week, now this blowout loss on the road, I would be very surprised if the pressure is not quickly building on Sonny Dykes. They are 6-4. They go to Houston. They play Cincinnati to wrap up the season. They could lose both of those games. They certainly have the talent to win both of those games. But it's not a good scene right now in Fort Worth. Now, on the other side, BYU was dominant. And you heard them talk about it on the broadcast early in the game. After that loss last week to Texas Tech, the way that the offensive game plan was set up for Bear Bachmeier to methodically get his confidence back as a true freshman, move the ball down the field, get the offense humming, and put some early points on the board. You saw it work out tremendously throughout the night. Bachmeier was unbelievable, had arguably his best game of the season, at least passing the ball, which means best game of his career as a freshman. 296 passing yards, 9 yards a pass, 93 QBR. He was fantastic. Rushed for a score because he does at least one of those every week, it seems like. 59 rushing yards. He was tremendous for BYU in this dominant win. And this also amazingly snapped a 5-game skid against the Horned Frogs for BYU. Not that history mattered a lot in this game, but it's notable for BYU fans since these teams have obviously had a history together. And the defense for BYU held Josh Hoover to 183 passing yards and had 2 picks. That's a season low on passing yards. There were some, I don't want to call them scuffles, but you heard the broadcast as well talk about, I guess, a sideline issue between Hoover and Eric McAllister, a star wide receiver. He finished with 107 yards on 4 catches, and TCU had only 15 first downs, went 1 of 10 on 3rd down. BYU attacked it on the ground and through the air, equal efficiency. They were dominating at the half, 27-10, and then they just rolled their way to a 44-13 win in incredibly impressive fashion. So they come off of that Texas Tech loss, and now they find themselves in a spot where they're 6-1 in the Big 12. They've got Cincinnati on the road coming up this weekend, and then UCF. They win out, they're playing for a Big 12 championship. We know that. That's been the case. But some people thought this TCU game might be a little tricky. It was not. They were dominant. They gave you exactly the kind of bounce-back performance that you would want to see if you were a BYU fan and if you're on the college football playoff committee. That's the other part of this that, let's be honest, matters. Because BYU has played really well, but they haven't had many of these blowouts. It's not really how they're built, right? But when you're blowing out teams by 30 points, let's be honest, that makes a difference. I mean, the committee can tell you, and they did years ago, that margin of victory wasn't something they were as focused on because they didn't want teams like running up the score. They care about it, okay? They do. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Margin of victory matters whether they admit it or not. They're human beings like the rest of us. And a 44-13 win over TCU is a lot more impressive and goes a lot further with certain people than had BYU eked out a 23-22 victory with a last-minute field goal. So this puts BYU in exactly the spot it wants to be in. Now they go on the road against Cincinnati. They probably wish Cincinnati had beaten Arizona. Would have been better for them. But you know what? It's okay because now Cincinnati's going to fall out of the top 25, so they're not going to have as much juice going to Cincinnati and trying to get that win. But a great victory for BYU. TCU's got issues, and, you know, they are two teams trending in very different directions right now. Let's talk about Utah and Baylor, shall we? Let's do that game here on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. Thanks for joining us, as always, as a part of the show. So Utah crushes Baylor 55-28. And Utah just ran all over the Bears. Baylor had one good week against UCF and then went back to pre-UCF Baylor. I mean, this was one of the games I was wrong about. I picked Baylor plus the points. Shame on me. My picks went 4-2 this weekend against the spread. But this was not one of the games that I hit. But Utah had rushing touchdowns of 74, 67, 64 yards, and had a 65-yard pick six. They needed just 59 plays to rack up 483 yards. 8.2 yards per play on offense. I mean, they were just dominant in Waco on Saturday night. And you've got an interesting thing going on with Devin Dampier at quarterback and then true freshman Burt Ficklin. The backup had 6 carries for 166 yards and 2 scores. So Dampier got the start, obviously, and he was solid. But you know what I'm getting a sense of? It's almost like a Chris Leak, Tim Tebow situation going on at Utah with Dampier and Ficklin. I am not suggesting that Burt Ficklin's going to be Tim Tebow. I'm just saying that what's going on right now has Leak Tebow analogies involved in it and to it. That's what I'm sensing and seeing. But you've got both guys. Use them. Utah's 8-2 overall. They are 5-2 in conference play. They're not out of this thing just yet. And, you know, Utah gets a lot of love as having one of the best 2-loss records, or 2-loss resumes, I should say, in all of college football. And I was just talking about this with BYU and the margin of victory. Do people know that when it comes to the margin of victory, Utah has just been unbelievable on this front as well? I didn't realize it till I was going through their resume, and I'm like, wait, look at this for Utah. Look at this. Look at all of their wins. They've been by at least, gosh, hold on. Let me pull this up here because I saw it last night, and now I'm losing it here. So their losses are by, or their wins are by 33, 54, 25, 34, 32, 46, 31, and last night was a 27-point win. So every win by at least 25 points for Utah. Now, they have that loss to BYU, and they have the loss to Texas Tech, right? But every other win is by at least 25 points. They are dominating their opponents when they go out there and get these big victories. And they did it again against the Baylor team that showed some life against UCF in the week prior. So I think Utah is going to be in a very good spot. What I don't know, I mean, this is what's going to be tricky. If BYU makes the Big 12 championship game, right, and then BYU gets smoked once again by Texas Tech, and they have 2 losses, and they're by, let's say, 20-some-odd points, same as Utah's loss to Texas Tech, what do you do then with a second Big 12 team making a college football playoff? I would have to give it to BYU because of the head-to-head. I mean, to me, the head-to-head should matter, but I'm not convinced it's going to based on what the analytics show with Utah as one of the best two-loss teams in the country when it comes to their resume. I'm not saying that's the way to do it. I'm just prepping you for that debate that's coming, because that is the most likely scenario right now for how the Big 12 will play out. But I know there are Arizona State fans and Cincinnati fans saying, wait, we're not there yet. I know. Arizona State, who else? Utah and Cincinnati fans are all saying, what about us? What about us? Okay. I'm just prepping you for what is the most likely scenario right now in all of this. Now, as for Baylor, they're a mess. This was the pre-UCF Baylor team. Can't stop the run. Gave up 380 rushing yards. Dave Aranda can't get his side of the ball figured out. He did for a week, and that was it. Now you've got the drama with the AD Mac Rhodes. If they bring in a new AD and then Baylor doesn't get to a bowl game, they've got Arizona and Houston back-to-back. They'll be underdogs, I would guess, in both of those games. Is Dave Aranda going to make it one more year after going 5-7 this year, when a lot of people thought that this team was built to win the Big 12 and a lot of the key guys are gone next year? You're basically back to square one. Seems unlikely, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Huge win, dominant victory for Utah. 5 total touchdowns on the ground. Third time this season Utah has run for 5 or more scores. And by the way, it's only the second season in the Whittingham era that Utah has had 3 or more such games. Just an amazing performance in the trenches for Utah. And it's why I picked them before the season to play for a Big 12 championship against Texas Tech. They do look like that team. They just have the loss against Tech and then of course, loss to BYU as well. Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. Glad you're here. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you are a Big 12 or college football fan. Thanks for being here as always. We are next going to talk about Texas Tech and UCF. Another blowout. 48-9. The Red Raiders, no hangover game at all. I don't know. I know Joy McGuire likes our content, all right? And I love the guy. You know that if you've been following me and following this channel for any period of time. And if you don't, well, what are you waiting for? Subscribe right now. I wonder if Joy McGuire heard what I said on Wednesday when I suggested that Tech, coming off of the biggest game in Lubbock in almost 20 years, college game day, wild scene, top 10 matchup, was going to take the foot off the pedal a hair. Because he talked about it after the game. And he said, and I'm summarizing here, some people thought that we might have a letdown performance, but I got a bunch of veteran dudes. And they were not going to let that happen. And I respect that. But he doesn't just have veteran dudes. He's got dudes. I mean, he's just got absolute studs all over this team. And these guys were tremendous again on Saturday. They are now 10-2. I mean, they are a game away from obviously playing in that Big 12 championship. And it was unbelievable to watch, like, Jacob Rodriguez run into the end zone, strike the Heisman pose after the first offensive touchdown of his career, and it put UCF in a 14-0 hole early in the game, and obviously that was basically game, set, match. So this team, you had Rodriguez obviously building up, I think, a solid Heisman campaign at linebacker. He had another interception. He led the team with 9 tackles. It is so crazy to think that we're talking about a Texas Tech Heisman Trophy contender being somebody who's on defense. But that's how nasty that side of the ball is. Just think about it. I mean, UCF was in an early hole with 2 points because of a safety that came from a hold on Texas Tech in its own end zone. But this game was over very quickly, and the good news is that it got Baron Morton to the bench. All right, he's dealing with that fracture in his leg. He can just go out there, and he got to rest, and now they've got a bye week before they wrap up the season against West Virginia, and then have to, if they win that game, play in a Big 12 championship game. So Morton got the rest that he needed. It could not have been a better follow-up game to what happened last week against BYU based on what the expectations were. And you now have all 10 of Texas Tech's wins by at least 20 points, which obviously is a school record, and their average margin of victory is 33.8. Our guy, Tim Brando, was going off on playoff privilege. He kept saying, or he said a couple times during the broadcast, this team is getting disrespected by the committee. And you would think that, well, what do you mean they're number 6 in the country? If you had an SEC team running up these kinds of scores with this kind of resume, they'd be number 1 in the country. They would be. Okay? That's no doubt about it in my mind. And that is exactly what Tim Brando was getting at when he was talking about this on Saturday during the broadcast. He was tremendous. He was backing up the Big 12. It was great to see. And you know what? We need guys like Tim Brando on the College Football Playoff Committee. That's what we need. You know, Texas Tech and Ohio State have strength of schedules that are right next to each other. Ohio State's 50, Texas Tech is 52. All right? I mean, let's be honest about that. So that's what's going on right now, but no one talks about Ohio State and says, oh, you know, easy record, easy schedule, strength of schedule. They don't do that with Ohio State. Never do. Right? So I'm just saying, what Brando's talking about there is accurate. And he's got the Big 12's back. He knows what's going on with these brands getting a lot of attention over a team like Texas Tech. And on top of that, same thing happened on College Game Day. And I want to take a break with College Game Day because they have been pretty fair to the Big 12 the last couple of weeks. But every time Tech comes up, they talk about the money. They don't talk about the money with Ohio State. They don't talk about the money with A&M. They don't talk about the money with Georgia. They're all spending a lot of money. Can we stop with this idea that Tech is the only team that spends a lot of money on college football programs in 2025? I mean, stop, please. They're all doing it. But for some reason, every time Tech comes up in one of these national conversations, they go right to the money. As if nobody else is doing this. As if it's a foreign concept where Tech is spending 30, 40 mil and everybody else is spending $3 to $4 million. Indiana, Alabama, Georgia, they're all doing it. So stop with this. We're talking about Texas Tech. We got to talk about how much money they spent on the roster. Goodness gracious, it's so tiresome. What's not tiresome is you being here as a part of the show. Make sure you're subscribed. UCF's in a tough spot now. They're 4-6. They got to win out to reach a bowl game. And Scott Frost gets a big bonus if they do. They got Oklahoma State at home this weekend. They'll be favored. But then they got to wrap up the year at BYU, with BYU probably looking at a trip to a Big 12 championship game with a win. So I don't like their odds there. I don't at all. Please make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for joining us, as always, on the show. All right, next up, we are going to talk about Arizona's solid win on the road against number 25 Cincinnati. How about that game for Arizona? You know, Arizona was a team that a lot of people still were not buying. I took them plus the points on the road. They won the game outright. I gave you that. And I'll tell you, this pass defense is legit. Arizona held Brendan Sorsby to one of his worst passing games of the season. 15 of 28, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, and the 2 picks. Cincinnati did get it going on the ground, and I said in the preview show on Wednesday, if Cincinnati was going to win the game, it was going to have to be on the ground. But Arizona's offense was humming too, and that was problematic for the Bearcats in this game. Risano had himself his best game of the season after getting injured early in the year. The star running back led the team with 94 rushing yards and a score, including a 50-yarder on the day. And Fafita had himself 300 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no big mistakes. I mean, Arizona played exactly the kind of game that you want to play on the road. All right? They owned time of possession. They won the turnover battle. They had fewer penalties. I mean, it was exactly the kind of game that you want. It was a clean game. And it was a very good win against the Cincinnati team that still is in the Big 12 hunt at 5-2, but they got to win against BYU this week. And frankly, with how they looked on Saturday, I'm not convinced that they're going to do it. They're going to be an underdog going into the game. But, you know, you look at the way that this game played out in particular, and right out of the gates, what happens? Arizona's pass defense shows up. We told you this was going to be a key to the game. And Sorsby throws an interception on the first play from scrimmage, and Arizona turns it into a touchdown from Mahdi 2 plays later on the ground. This is not what you think of Arizona football being. We talk about this with Texas Tech as well. This is not a team that is just out there like throwing the ball for 400 yards and giving up 390 passing yards. Texas Tech is defense first in the Big 12. Arizona's defense, especially the pass defense, has been the unit that has driven this team to the success that it's having. That's what's been so impressive for Arizona. I mean, I got a buddy that's on the East Coast. He's an Arizona guy. He doesn't watch, I know, as many games as he wants to because, like me, he's got little kids. But, you know, he got to watch a full game on Saturday, and he's like, this is great. These guys are fun to watch. They are. They're a lot of fun to watch. And they start off the game, with the touchdown 2 plays after the interception, and Cincinnati got it back. And then Cincinnati got itself a lead, right? And Arizona then misses a field goal and then misses another field goal. And you're like, boy, they're on the road, backs against the wall. But once again, what happened? The defense stepped up. They get an interception in the second quarter, and they put together a long 11-play, 58-yard drive, and they get those 3 points on the board before halftime. And that was like, I think, a sigh of relief for this Arizona team where it's like, okay, we're in this thing. Calm down. We've got them right where we want them. And Brent Brennan is fine taking field goals because he knows what this defense can do. They take a field goal to start the second half, right? Another nice long drive, 68 yards. They're not forcing it, going for it on fourth down unnecessarily. Like, you know, 4th and goal at the Cincinnati, whatever that was, 6-7 yard line to start the second half. They're not trying to get a touchdown there. Take the field goal. Take the points. You had a long drive. How are your guys feeling good? Trust your defense. And what do? They force a 3 and out. Then they have a 99-yard drive with Risano's 50-yard touchdown run capping the thing off. I mean, that's how this team is built. That's what Brent Brennan has with these guys. And then you're in the lead 20-14, and you never look back, right? You start the fourth quarter with another big, nice drive that ends up going to the house. And Fafita had his touchdown pass on that drive early in the fourth quarter. So it was a perfectly executed game in that spot for the Arizona Wildcats. And now Arizona's sitting there with 7 wins. They're 4-3 in the Big 12. They're having one of the most underrated seasons in the league, and they get Baylor and Arizona State. 9 wins is not crazy to think about for this Arizona team, and that would be a heck of a year 2 bounce back for a guy like Brent Brennan, who a lot of us didn't know if he was going to make it to a year 2 based on last year's 4-8 season. But it has been a lot of fun to watch this team. I'm really enjoying these guys. And for Cincinnati, listen, when they're playing the better competition, they're struggling. It's not as evident as last year because they're better than last year's team, but now they've got BYU this weekend. Let's be honest. They're looking at a 3rd straight loss. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but they will be an underdog in this game at home, and they should be. And this is basically the season here on Saturday. If they win, they're in a great position, obviously, to get to a Big 12 championship game still, despite the loss to Arizona. But then you get into some tiebreaker scenarios, potentially with a team like Utah, if you both have 2 league losses. And then you got to go to TCU to wrap up the season as well. So it's a tough stretch to wrap it up here for Cincinnati, and we will see how they close out this season. But it still has been a very good year under Satterfield. Obviously, his best year since they joined the Big 12. But you don't want to end it with 4 straight losses either, right? You really don't want to do that if you're Cincinnati, because you think about how last year went, and you ended it with 5 straight losses. You end it with 4 straight losses. As good as the year was, as much as there was improvement, that's going to leave a nasty taste in people's mouths. All right, next up, let's talk about what happened here in the Arizona State-West Virginia game. Arizona State wins 25-23 on Saturday. And you know what? How about Jeff Sims throwing the ball? My goodness. Now, after the game, Kenny Dillingham told the broadcast team, hey, we got 2 guys that can play on Sundays. I've always believed that. That's a bit much. I love Kenny, but that's a bit much. 2 guys that can play on Sundays? Are you kidding me? Come on. I mean, I love Jeff Sims. I saw him do things I didn't think he could do, passing the ball. I mean, some of these back shoulder passes he was throwing down the sideline, I'm like, when did Jeff Sims become Patrick Mahomes? It was a lot of fun, and he was tremendous. But I'll tell you what, sitting there watching that game, it was all about what this guy did, filling in for Sam Levitt, keeping this team in the mix for a Big 12 championship game as they sit there and they obviously try to defend their Big 12 title. It's not likely right now. I think I saw the odds at about 15% that they could go out there and they could actually get this thing done, get to a Big 12 championship, and defend their title. It's not likely. But you know what? They got to win, and it was one of those games that was more back and forth than some of you probably thought it was going to be. I was on West Virginia plus 10.5. They needed that field goal late to get it done. But give credit to West Virginia on the road. Scotty Fox Jr., man, I love this true freshman quarterback. He is just a hustler. He's a baller. And West Virginia fans have a lot to be excited about. Now, they lost the game, meaning they're out of contention for a bowl game. But, gosh, there are good vibes right now in Morgantown, and there should be. They were down 22-10 in the fourth quarter. Arizona State misses a field goal. West Virginia comes down the field, 10 plays, 72 yards, scores. And then they score another touchdown a couple of drives later, and they're in the lead, 23-22. They missed the 2-point conversion. I didn't like the 2-point conversion play. It's like, I know Rich Rod wants to run the ball, but they weren't having a lot of success running the ball. Scotty Fox, get him out of the pocket, give him options on that 2-point conversion, and roll the dice there. But it was predictable. It was stale. It wasn't working, running the ball between the tackles, and that's what they tried to do on that 2-point conversion. And I was like, that's going to cost them. It's going to cost them, and it did. Had they hit the 2-point conversion, you're going overtime. But they missed the 2-point conversion. They had to go for it, obviously. No point in being up 2. And then Arizona State comes down the field and ends up with what turned out to be the game-winning field goal. But, man, there are still great vibes coming out of Morgantown, and there should be. Even with the season likely ending 4-8 because they played Texas Tech to end the year, this team made strides, got better, and Scotty Fox Jr. looks like the answer at quarterback, and it was a heck of a lot of fun to watch. But you know what? Arizona State is a team built with winners. They still have those guys, a lot of those guys from last year. Not all of them, obviously. A lot of key players missing. But you've got a veteran quarterback in Sims. He's been around the program, and he threw for 200 yards and 3 scores. He rushed for, 80 yards, led the team in that category too. He was fantastic. And while there's still long shots to make that Big 12 championship game, they haven't given up. This team had every reason to roll over, and they didn't do it. To their credit, they did not do it. They have kept the foot on the pedal. They're 7-3. They got a couple of games against Colorado and Arizona. If they go 8-4, split these games, that's awesome. If they win them both and go 9-3, holy cow, that would be tremendous. So congratulations to Arizona State. You're still in the mix. I don't like to say participation trophies, but I just feel really good about both of these teams right now. So credit to them. That was a really fun game on Saturday afternoon, Arizona State over West Virginia. I'll wrap it up with the ugly game. Let's do it on Heartland College Sports. K-State beating Oklahoma State 14-6. Oh, man. This one gives me the just shivers just having to talk about it. It was ugly. I took Oklahoma State plus the 19.5, so I felt good about that. But it was ugly. K-State looked soulless, lifeless. Oklahoma State had a little bit of juice. I thought they would. With Justin Blackman back and the awards and coming off the bye and Zane Flores back at quarterback. Honestly, if you told me K-State was only going to score 14 points, I thought OSU might have pulled off the upset. But they just couldn't get the offense going in any meaningful way. But Flores looked better. The rushing game had something going for OSU. It was an ugly game for both these teams. But K-State got outgained by almost 100 yards. They still won the game. They lost time of possession, but what did they have going for them? Turnovers. They won that 5-1. They forced 2 fumbles that were lost by OSU. They had 3 interceptions against Oklahoma State. That's why they won the game. Simple as that. And Chris Kleiman can say all he wants. Hey, it's a tough place to play here in Stillwater. It's the first time he's won there. I'm just taking the win and moving on. With the way this season has gone, I'm not sure you can really just say that, but I get it as the head coach why he would want to take that approach. I totally understand why he would take that approach of basically saying, you know what, get the win and move on. It's not the worst thing to have a game like this because it happens to every team at some point, but they were playing with some fire, especially coming out of a bye week and looking like that in Stillwater. Now you got to go to Utah coming up next week. That's obviously going to be a very difficult on the road. You're 5-5, and then you can try to get to bowl eligibility at home against Colorado to wrap up the season. So, that's probably how it goes for K-State here. They probably lose at Utah and win against Colorado, go 6-6, go to the, whatever bowl game, Liberty Bowl, and then move on to next year. I'm not saying change is coming or should be coming, but this was a hugely disappointing season for K-State. There's no two ways about it. Obviously, it's been a disaster for Oklahoma State, and you're looking at the game and you're like, okay, do I try to find reasons to be optimistic? Or do you just realize that you are going to be starting from scratch, you are going to have new faces all over the place, and you don't even know who's going to be on the team next year, who's currently on the team, so you can't get too excited about guys when you don't know if they're coming back next year. That's the weird spot to be in this current college football climate, right? It's a very difficult spot to be in. But the hard part for Chris Kleiman, too, is being like Stillwater's a tough place to play when literally Oklahoma State is going on 2 years since they've won a league game in Stillwater. So I did want to make sure I at least noted that. I mean, because it's true, right? But these two teams obviously are just playing out the string. K-State still trying to get to a bowl game. Oklahoma State just trying to move on. And Oklahoma State, to its credit, did have some fight, which, you know what, when you're 1-9 and you're 0-7, showing some fight is something that you got to give these guys credit for because it has been a disaster and nightmare of a season. But it's been a great season for the Big 12, and we're glad you're here. I would love it if you would make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're a Big 12 or college football fan, drop us a rating and a review on the podcast. And thank you so much for doing that, as always. We couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Share the show with some friends. We'll talk to you soon here. Go Big 12.